Hi, I'm MTG and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing kind of like a little breakdown of what to expect and what the heck are these like conventions are like, or even just Commandfest, to have a better understanding of like what to bring, and again like what decks to bring specifically, and maybe rule zero conversations that you need to have with people that you're going to be playing Commander games with. So I thought it'd be really helpful to kind of like break down a little bit more and describe the experience, at least from what it's like going to like Commandfest or again a Magic convention. For me, I haven't been to like the Magic conventions before because they're usually pretty far away and like out of state. So a lot of things that I've gone to are like Commandfests, which are an absolute blast. Basically, you just have a ton of tables together with people that all want to play Commander, and there's various like power levels that you can do. So if you have a hard time finding like CDH games, you probably have an easy time at a Commandfest just picking up games for that. And then usually there's really cool vendors, artists, people who want to get their cards signed or their playmat signed by like people that did the original artwork for it. So it's just a really cool environment. And then there's usually like people that are doing like cosplays and cosplay competitions as well. So just a big fun event full of people having a great time and really enjoying themselves. So with that, I thought it'd be cool to kind of, again, do like a breakdown because we are having the Las Vegas Magic Convention coming up around the corner here. So some of you might be going to like your very first Magic convention ever. So something that I think is important to understand is kind of like, what are some good ideas for a baseline of what to bring to these sort of events? So I like to bring, and I think this is probably my most important item, is a water bottle, to make sure that you're drinking water, because sometimes you get really excited and focused on all the cool things going on that you forget to drink water. So don't forget to drink water, friends. And then I try to bring snacks too. So like if you are, not wanting to spend too much money on like convention, food, or the restaurants around you maybe are pricey, it can be a good idea just to bring snacks. But make sure you don't bring like messy snacks, because remember, you might be touching cards. So not getting like anything like Cheeto dust all over your expensive like dual lands or something like that would be tragic. And then of course like your standard like playmat and dice, all that good stuff. And I kind of like to bring like an extra playmat in case people forget theirs. I'll offer mine. And then dice, I'll bring like ones that have +1 counter stuff on it and then -1 counter stuff on it, and just D20s, all these kind of different types of things. And then tokens I think are really helpful to bring, because you don't necessarily just want to bring the tokens that are relevant to your deck, but it could be like tokens to make like a 3/3 beast or an Elefante. If someone uses like a Beast Within or a Generous Gift against you, you can have those ready to go, and then maybe share with other people who need those tokens as well. And of course your decks, and because that sounds like a lot of stuff already, you're probably going to want to have a sturdy backpack, because sometimes people will wear like ones with like side shoulder straps, and I think that can hurt your neck after a while. So I usually like to do 2 shoulder straps of like a backpack, because it kind of distributes the weight better. And if you're on your feet for like 8 hours or maybe longer than that, it's good to just have something that is going to be really stable so the weight is evenly distributed. And then the other thing too is sometimes people bring their trade binders as a way to like protect their cards. So if you're opening packs or if you're purchasing other things that you want to keep protected, having a backpack, having a safe container to like hold your cards that you might be opening in packs are a good idea, because we are at a Magic convention or we're at a Magic Commandfest, and it's a good idea to just be prepared to kind of have a safe way to store cards and all that fun stuff. And then something too, this might just be like an extra thing, but I think bringing like a pen or some way for people to sign stuff is a good idea, because you never know who you run into. And sometimes like I've played in pods where people like to have everyone that they've played with like sign their playmat just as like a fun little memory thing. And I think that's like a really cool idea. So sometimes I'll just bring a pen in case, who knows, maybe you want someone to sign something random of yours. And then as far as like how many decks I usually bring for like these kinds of events, because again, even if you're going to a convention, you're probably going to see like a play area for like, commander games going on and stuff like that. So usually I try to bring like decks that can scale to different power levels, because I think everyone has their own idea of like what low power is, what mid power is, what high power is. And so having different decks that can scale with different types of like groups or gameplay is a really good idea. So I usually do like 1 to 2 low power, 1 to 2 mid power, 1 to 2 like high power or CDH decks. And then if you're someone like me who has like over 12 commander decks, You're probably not going to want to bring all of those decks because that's a lot of weight for one to carry. And if you're flying out somewhere, you don't want to risk like your baggage or anything getting lost and losing all of your Magic card collection. So I usually just bring like, again, 1 to 2 like decks that meet those kind of categories. And then I also think like, what are some decks that are like really fun for me to bring? So like ones that scale really well with like new play groups. Like for me, I have like a deck that it basically is like, okay, like I think this deck can scale well with whatever the like power level is of the group, or at least if it's like mid power, like optimized, it can have like enough responses or potential removal, but not enough to make it like feel bad if I'm playing a lower power pod. So stuff like that can be good to think about, which kind of leads into Rule 0 talk a little bit, which I think is important, even if you're like a little shy or maybe a little social anxiety there. That's totally normal. So I think it's important though, like for Rule 0 conversations to happen, because you want to establish like what type of gameplay you're looking for. And if you're newer, you don't know what Rule 0 means. It's basically like where you communicate with the group that you're playing for Commander to determine like what kind of game you want. So if you want like a very strong optimized decks with like lots of tutors or anything like that, like maybe some people don't want that kind of game. They want like a slower one that maybe they have a new pre-con they want to try out, and like playing something with tons of tutors and removal could be difficult for them to really like learn how to play that pre-con. So just having an understanding of like what everyone's looking for is really important. But one thing, again, that I mentioned earlier is everyone kind of has their own idea of like what low power is, what mid power is. And sometimes you hear people just say like, my deck's a 7 out of 10. And if you're newer, again, you're like, what the heck does that mean? So I kind of like to think about like asking questions instead that kind of describe the deck's behavior than necessarily asking people like if their deck's mid power. Because a lot of times people say, yes, my deck's mid power, and you're not really like on the same level of like understanding of what you both think is mid power. So some questions I like to ask are like, what turn does your deck typically win by? And for the most part, people have like a good idea. They'll be like, oh, turn like 8 or later, maybe turn 7. And for me, that kind of makes that fall a little bit into like the mid power range, even if they have combos and they just still don't think their deck is going to win until turn 8 or later. In my opinion, that's like more mid power. And then if they win by like turn 4 or 5, that could be hitting like high power, even closer to CDH. Kind of depends on like what kind of mana they're running and stuff like that. So just kind of getting an idea of like, okay, you know, they can win by turn 8. My mind's automatically going to think like more mid power. So then if the next question should be, what's the soonest your deck can win by? Which I think highlights a bit more of like if we're in like mid power, like kind of mid-range, or kind of like mid-power to high power, like, you know, getting to the more optimized kind of perspective on stuff. Because if people say like, well, I usually don't win until turn 8, but I can win by turn 4. So then you're like, okay, so which is it? Like, are you sure you're mid-power? Because that's pretty soon you could win by. And sometimes people like have the combo pieces in their deck, but the chances of them like having that setup is very rare. But usually when I get those kind of responses, I'm like, okay, this person's probably playing like mid-power optimized. So I'm going to have tutors. I want to have like instant speed removal, or like ways that I can adapt a bit more to like what's going on with the board. And so that's usually when I bring like a little bit more of my stronger decks out. And more often than not, like people are going to play like multiple games with you if the pod likes each other and everyone gets along. So maybe if you can gauge after that, like, okay, was that mid power that I had kind of meeting like what theirs was too. So it's just a good idea to, again, ask these questions to kind of paint a better picture of like what mid power means to each person. And then the other question I always ask too, because I have some decks that run like free spells or like tutors or Ristic Study, I'll usually ask like, are you okay with that? Because some people, again, think that like Ristic Study or like Vampiric Tutor is kind of like more high power stuff, or even like Fierce Guardianship. Because again, it's just kind of gauging what kind of, you know, experience that you want from this game. Because Commander takes up a lot of time for everyone. So, you know, you don't want to spend like an hour of your time and then just be miserable. So again, it's really important just to kind of have these conversations, and don't be shy about it. You know, like everyone's there to have like a good time. And then if you realize, you know, maybe this play group isn't for me, it's not rude to just be like, hey, I think you're a bit more intense, or hey, I'm looking for like higher power like pod, I'll try to find a different table. And I think people would appreciate that over like, you know, having a game that everyone's kind of miserable sitting through for like 2 hours. So don't be shy about that kind of stuff, because I think that's how you get to like, one, enjoy and get to know people a bit better, but then also have a better idea of like how you want to use your time. So last thing I just wanted to close out with, which is just like a basic safety tip. I have been to a couple of Commandfests where people have just like left their bags with all their magic cards unattended. And like my friend and I have like watched it because we're like, oh my gosh, they just like walked away from their bag and like didn't want anyone to take their things. So just make sure that like, even though like everyone's really cool and really nice, like you just want to make sure that you're being really like conscientious of like your surroundings as well, because it would really suck if someone, whether intentionally or accidentally, like walked away with your bag of your precious magic cards, especially decks that you might be really excited about and that you might have spent a pretty penny on. So just be careful with that. Make sure you know, if you're not taking your cards with you to the bathroom, ask someone around you to watch your stuff. If you trust them, key part is trusting them, and just take care of your things. But yeah, sorry. It's not too much of a ramble there. And I hope this guide was helpful. I really enjoy like any sort of Commandfest, and I hope to go to the convention eventually. So let me know in the comments if you're actually going to the Las Vegas Magic Convention, and you know, excited to hear about your experiences with all that. So hope you have a good one, and bye.